Commander Zephyr stood in the command center of the Alliance flagship, watching his people die. The crystal-based selenite had lived for 300 years but had never seen destruction like this. The Vorthak Empire had swept through 17 star systems in just 4 months. Their biomechanical warriors moved like death itself, crushing everything in their path. The last transmission from the Kepler system had been a scream cut short by static. Zephyr's crystalline form pulsed with dim blue light as he processed the data. 12 billion lives had been snuffed out in less than a week. The Vorthak war machines were unstoppable. They turned captured worlds into breeding grounds for more soldiers and weapons. General Clith of the insectoid hive mind species clicked his mandibles nervously. "We need reinforcements or we all die," he buzzed through the translation device. "The Vorthak fleet is heading for Haven's Gate. If they take that world, the entire alliance falls." Zephyr activated the emergency beacon. The desperate message would reach every known species in the galaxy. It was a call for help that had never been sent before in Alliance history. The crystal being's voice cracked as he spoke into the transmitter. "This is Commander Zephyr of the Galactic Defense Alliance. We face complete extinction. The Vorthak Empire has broken through our lines. 17 systems have fallen. We request immediate military assistance from any species capable of rendering aid. This is our final transmission." 3 days later, the response came from an unexpected source. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair aboard the UES Phoenix reading the alien message. The human was tall and lean with short brown hair and sharp green eyes. He had joined the Earth Defense Corps straight out of college and worked his way up through the ranks over 15 years. "Sir, this doesn't look good," said Lieutenant Carol Stevens at the communications station. She was a young officer with blonde hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. "These aliens are getting wiped out by something called the Vorthak Empire." Jake studied the star charts on his screen. Humanity had only made contact with galactic civilization 3 years ago. Earth was still considered a backwater planet by most alien species. The human fleet consisted of just 5 ships with basic weapons and defensive systems. "Get me Admiral Linda Brooks on the secure channel," Jake ordered. Admiral Brooks appeared on the main screen minutes later. She was a veteran officer with gray hair and stern features who had commanded Earth's defense forces for over 2 decades. Her office on Luna Station showed the blue marble of Earth through the windows behind her. "Captain Morrison, I assume you've seen the alien distress call," she said without preamble. "Yes, ma'am. I think we should respond," Jake replied. Brooks raised an eyebrow. "Captain, we're talking about going up against an empire that has conquered 17 star systems. Our entire fleet has 5 ships and 2,000 personnel. Admiral, these aliens helped us understand galactic technology when we first made contact. They shared their medical knowledge and scientific data. We owe them," Jake said. The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. "You really think 5 human ships can make a difference?" "Maybe not, but we have to try. It's the right thing to do." Brooks nodded slowly. "Very well, Captain. You have authorization to respond to their request. Take the Phoenix, the Aurora, the Defiance, the Liberty, and the Endeavor. Colonel Amy Rodriguez will command ground forces. Commander Rick Sullivan will handle naval operations." Jake felt his heart rate increase. This would be humanity's first real military action in space. "Understood, Admiral. We'll make Earth proud." The human fleet departed 3 hours later. Colonel Amy Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Phoenix watching Earth shrink in the view screen. She was a tough Marine officer with dark hair and brown eyes who had served in conflicts around the globe. Her ground forces consisted of 1,500 Marines trained for combat in hostile environments. "Jake, I hope you know what we're getting into," she said to the captain. "Honestly, Amy, I have no idea, but sitting back and doing nothing isn't an option." Commander Rick Sullivan joined them at the navigation station. He was a naval officer with red hair and freckles who specialized in ship-to-ship combat tactics. "Sir, I've been studying the alien fleet compositions. Their ships are bigger than ours, but they seem to rely on energy shields and beam weapons." "What's our advantage?" Jake asked. "Speed and maneuverability. Our ships are smaller but much faster. We can probably hit and run if we have to." The journey to the Kepler 442 system took 6 days at maximum warp. When they dropped out of hyperspace, the human crews got their first look at a galactic war zone. Debris from destroyed ships floated in space like metal snow. The fortress world of Haven's Gate hung in the distance, surrounded by the battered remains of the Alliance fleet. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Stevens. "How many ships did they lose?" "Sensors show at least 200 wrecks," reported Ensign Bill Parker at the science station. Most of them are completely vaporized. An incoming transmission crackled through the static. Commander HFY's crystalline face appeared on screen looking exhausted and desperate. Unknown vessels, identify yourselves immediately or be fired upon. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Corps, responding to your distress call. We're here to help. The alien commander's crystal body flashed with surprise. Humans, you came from the Class 12 Deathworld? We did not expect anyone to respond, especially not a Deathworld species. What's a Deathworld species? Jake asked. General Clith's insect face appeared beside HFY. Your planet Terra is classified as a Class 12 Deathworld. Most sentient life evolves on peaceful planets with stable conditions. Your world has extreme weather, dangerous predators, toxic plants, and deadly microorganisms. It is remarkable that intelligent life survived there at all. Colonel Rodriguez stepped forward. Commander, what's the tactical situation? The Vorthak have landed ground forces on Haven's Gate. Our troops cannot match their biomechanical soldiers. Each Vorthak warrior stands 12 feet tall and can tear through our strongest materials. They have overrun 70% of the planet's surface. How long do you have? Jake asked. Perhaps days before complete defeat. Our soldiers need rest periods and environmental suits to survive. The Vorthak fight continuously without pause. They are born for war. Jake looked at his officers. Amy Rodriguez had a grim smile on her face. Rick Sullivan was already calculating attack vectors. These were humans who had trained their entire lives for combat. Commander HFY, we're going to land our forces on Haven's Gate. My Marines will help hold the defensive lines while our ships support from orbit. The alien's crystalline features showed confusion. Captain Morrison, I appreciate your courage, but you only have 5 small ships. The Vorthak fleet numbers in the hundreds. Sometimes it's not about the size of the force. It's about how you use it. Within hours, the human fleet was in orbit around Haven's Gate. The planet's surface showed the scars of intense fighting. Massive craters marked where Vorthak weapons had struck. Cities burned in the distance while Alliance forces retreated to their final defensive positions. Colonel Rodriguez assembled her Marines in the shuttle bay. Listen up, people. We're going down there to help aliens we've never met fight enemies we know nothing about. But that's what Marines do. We adapt, improvise, and overcome. Earth is counting on us. The first shuttle launched toward the planet's surface. Jake watched from the bridge as his people descended into hell. None of them knew they were about to change galactic history forever. The first human shuttle touched down on Haven's Gate as explosions lit up the horizon. Colonel Amy Rodriguez jumped out before the landing ramp fully extended. The air was thick with smoke and ash that would have choked most alien species. The Marines breathed it like a light morning fog. Sergeant Pete Johnson led his squad toward the Alliance defensive line. The big Marine from Texas had served in 3 different Earth wars before joining the Space Corps. Behind him, Corporal Lisa Martinez checked her weapon systems. The small but deadly soldier from California had earned her rank fighting in the South American conflicts. Holy hell, Johnson muttered as they crested a ridge. Below them stretched the main battlefield where Alliance forces were making their last stand. Crystalline Selenites fired energy weapons from behind makeshift barriers, while insectoid hive mind soldiers clicked frantically into their communication devices. The retreat was turning into a rout. Then the Vorthak appeared over the opposite ridge. The biomechanical warriors stood 12 feet tall with metal grafted directly into their flesh. Their arms ended in weapon systems that could punch through starship armor. They moved with mechanical precision across the battlefield, while their smaller prey fled before them. Sweet Mother of God, Martinez whispered. Those things are huge. Lieutenant Dan Parker dropped beside them with his reconnaissance squad. The young officer from Michigan had requested the most dangerous assignment on the planet. Colonel wants us to hold the primary defensive line. Alliance forces are falling back to secondary positions. Johnson studied the approaching enemy through his scope. How many Marines do we have on the ground? 400 so far. More shuttles coming down every 10 minutes, Parker replied. 400 humans against 10,000 Vorthak. I've seen worse odds, Martinez said with a grin. The first Vorthak reached the Alliance line and began tearing through their defenses like paper. Crystalline bodies shattered under massive claws while insect soldiers were crushed by mechanical fists. The alien weapons barely scratched the enemy armor. Move out, Johnson ordered. The Marines advanced at a steady pace while their alien allies retreated around them. Commander Zephahai watched from his command post as the humans walked directly into the path of the approaching war machines. His crystalline form pulsed with confusion. "General Clith, what are the humans doing? They should be establishing fallback positions like proper military doctrine requires," the Selenite commander said. The insectoid general clicked his mandibles nervously. "I do not understand their tactics. They appear to be advancing toward superior enemy forces without adequate support or environmental protection." On the battlefield, the first human and Vorthak forces met with a crash that echoed across the valley. Johnson emptied his assault rifle into the nearest enemy warrior. The bullets bounced off thick armor, but the impact staggered the 12-foot monster. Martinez rolled between its legs and planted explosive charges on its joints. "Fire! In the hole!" she yelled. The by B explosion brought down the first Vorthak that Alliance forces had seen killed in months of fighting, but 3 more took its place immediately. The Marines spread out and began using terrain that other species found too dangerous to traverse. Lieutenant Parker led his squad through a toxic swamp that the Alliance had marked as impassable. The brackish water contained chemicals that would dissolve most alien species within minutes. The humans waded through it like it was a swimming pool. "This stuff smells like that river back home in Detroit," Parker commented as purple foam dissolved his equipment straps. "At least it's not on fire." His squad emerged from the swamp behind the Vorthak advance and began hitting enemy supply lines. The biomechanical warriors had never faced enemies who could move through areas they considered completely hostile to life. Back on the main line, Staff Sergeant Maria Santos had been fighting continuously for 6 hours. The tough soldier from New Mexico had grown up in desert conditions that would kill most galactic species. While her alien allies collapsed from exhaustion and heat stroke, she was just getting warmed up. Santos found herself alone at a critical choke point as Alliance forces retreated for mandatory rest periods. 12 Vorthak warriors advanced toward her position. Any sane person would have fallen back. Instead, she dug in deeper. "Come on, you ugly bastards. I've got all day," she said, checking her ammunition. The first enemy warrior charged. Santos put 3 grenades into its chest cavity before rolling aside. The explosion took out 2 more Vorthak, but 8 still kept coming. She switched to her backup rifle and began placing shots into joint connections and optical sensors. Hours passed. The sun set over Haven's Gate, but the fighting continued. Alliance forces tried to send reinforcements, but Santos had already been fighting longer than most species could stay awake. They assumed she was dead and began planning to abandon the position. Major Chris Taylor found her 18 hours later, still holding the line. Bodies of dead Vorthak were stacked 3 deep around her position. Santos was down to her sidearm and combat knife, but still firing at anything that moved. "Sergeant, how long have you been fighting?" Taylor asked in amazement. "Since we landed, sir. Maybe 18 or 19 hours. Hard to keep track," Santos replied, reloading her pistol. Taylor stared at her in shock. "Sergeant, most Alliance species can only fight for 2 or 3 hours before requiring extended rest periods." "Well, sir, I'm not most species. I'm a Marine." Word of the human performance spread through Alliance command like wildfire. Species that required environmental suits to survive on Haven's Gate watched humans fight in natural conditions. Soldiers who needed 8 hours of sleep per day observed Marines operating on 2 or 3 hours of rest. Medic Helen Carter set up her aid station in what other species considered a contaminated zone. The chemicals in the air would have been fatal to most galactic life forms. Helen had grown up in industrial areas of Earth where the air was worse than this on a good day. "Bring me the wounded," she called to Alliance stretcher bearers who were wearing full hazmat suits. A Selenite soldier was carried in with what appeared to be fatal injuries. His crystalline structure had been shattered in multiple places. Alliance medics had already given up on saving him. Helen took one look and began working. "Hand me the molecular sealant," she ordered her assistant. But Medic Carter, "His injuries are incompatible with life," the alien doctor protested. "On your world, maybe. On Earth, we call this a bad day at work." Helen worked for 4 hours straight reconstructing the alien's damaged crystal matrix. When she finished, the Selenite was not only alive but ready to return to combat. Word spread that human medics could save patients that other species considered already dead. Captain Tony Rodriguez led the first night assault in Alliance military history. Most galactic species were diurnal and required artificial lighting to operate in darkness. Humans had evolved as persistence hunters who could track prey for days without losing the trail. Move silent, move deadly, Rodriguez whispered to his squad as they crept through the Vorthak camp. The enemy had never faced nocturnal predators. Their biomechanical enhancements were designed for daytime battlefield superiority. In the dark, humans moved like ghosts while 12-foot war machines stumbled blind. By dawn, Rodriguez had eliminated 3 enemy supply depots and a command post without losing a single Marine. The Vorthak forces woke to find their rear areas in chaos and their communications disrupted. Commander HFY stood in his command center watching tactical displays that made no sense. Human forces had been fighting for 24 hours straight without rest or relief. They operated in environmental conditions that should have killed them within hours. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to be enjoying themselves. General Clith, I am beginning to understand why they call Earth a death world, the crystalline commander said quietly. Indeed. Perhaps we have been thinking about this war all wrong. The third day of fighting brought new horrors that would have broken any other species. Lieutenant Colonel Ben Thompson watched his Marines adapt to urban warfare as the battle moved into Haven's Gate's capital city. The Vorthak had expected to crush resistance in the open fields, but human forces kept retreating into environments that favored smaller, more flexible units. Sir, the enemy is having trouble with the narrow streets, reported Captain Nicole Foster from her position on the 20th floor of a damaged skyscraper. The sniper from Oregon had been picking off Vorthak commanders for 6 straight hours. These big war machines can't maneuver like they did in open terrain. Thompson nodded as he studied the tactical display. Where other species would have stuck to established military doctrine, humans were rewriting the rules of engagement every few hours. Keep hitting their leadership. Force them to promote inexperienced commanders. 3 blocks away, Private Kate Wilson crouched in the rubble of what used to be an alien shopping center. The young Marine from Florida had volunteered for the most dangerous patrol route through the contaminated industrial district. Chemical weapons from destroyed factories had created a toxic cloud that registered fatal on every Alliance scanner. Wilson breathed the poisoned air like it was ocean breeze. Growing up near the Everglades had exposed her to more biological toxins than most planets produced in their entire ecosystem. The diverse microbiology of Earth had given humans immune systems that could process compounds that would kill other species in minutes. Base, this is Wilson. I can see Vorthak supply lines through the chemical zone. Requesting permission to engage, she radioed. Wilson, those readings show lethal contamination levels. You need to fall back immediately, came the reply from Alliance Command. Sir, I feel fine. The air tastes a little funny, but nothing worse than spring pollen season back home. Commander HFY listened to the transmission from his command post with growing amazement. His crystalline structure would have dissolved in those chemicals within seconds. Even with full environmental protection, no Alliance species could survive in that zone. General Clith, how is this possible? Our scanners show toxicity levels that exceed our instrument's maximum readings, the Selenite commander said. The insectoid general's compound eyes reflected confused patterns. Commander, I have been studying human medical data. Their homeworld contains thousands of different poison-producing organisms. They appear to have developed resistance to most known biological and chemical weapons. Wilson moved through the toxic cloud like she was walking through morning mist. The Vorthak supply convoy never saw her coming. Her improvised explosive devices destroyed 3 ammunition carriers before the enemy realized they were under attack in an area they considered completely uninhabitable. Meanwhile, Staff Sergeant Frank Davis led his squad through the underground tunnel system beneath the city. The tunnels were flooded with contaminated water and filled with structural hazards that Alliance engineers had declared impassable. Davis had grown up exploring abandoned mine shafts in West Virginia. This was just another day underground. Watch your step, boys. This floor looks weak, he warned as they moved through a collapsed section. Sarge, how can you tell? It's pitch black down here, asked Corporal Andy Miller. You can hear it. The metal makes different sounds when it's about to give way. Plus the water flow changes when there's structural damage ahead. Davis was using skills that came naturally to humans, but seemed like magic to other species. Growing up on a world where everything was dangerous had taught humans to read environmental cues that other species never needed to develop. The squad emerged directly beneath a Vorthak command post. The enemy had chosen the location because it was impossible to approach from ground level. They had never considered that some species might attack from below through areas too dangerous for normal life. Captain Alex Mitchell coordinated the combined human-alien operation from his mobile command unit. The officer from Colorado had spent years in mountain rescue operations before joining the Space Corps. He understood how to work with different groups under extreme conditions. "Prelate Sorn, can your energy beings provide covering fire from the east?" he asked the luminoid commander. The alien's glowing form pulsed with agreement. "Captain Mitchell, your tactical flexibility continues to amaze us. We have fought wars the same way for thousands of years. Humans seem to invent new strategies every few hours. That's because we've never had the luxury of fighting the same war twice. On Earth, conditions change constantly. Adapt or die." As the fourth day began, the true scope of human capabilities became clear to everyone on Haven's Gate. Major Steve Davis proposed something that had never been attempted in galactic military history: a sustained offensive campaign lasting weeks instead of days. "Commander HFY, we need to keep pushing the Vorthak back while they're disorganized," Davis explained during the strategy meeting. "If we give them time to regroup, they'll adapt to our tactics. Major, our forces require extended rest periods between major engagements. Alliance military doctrine calls for a minimum of 72 hours recovery time after intensive combat," the crystalline commander replied. "Sir, my Marines have been fighting for 4 days straight. They're just hitting their stride." The Alliance commanders exchanged confused communications. In their experience, sustained combat operations were physically impossible. Most species could fight intensively for a few hours before requiring days of recovery. The concept of soldiers who got stronger during extended conflict was completely alien to them. Colonel Amy Rodriguez demonstrated this principle during the assault on the Vorthak's main defensive position. She had been leading from the front for 96 hours with only brief rest periods for equipment maintenance. Instead of showing fatigue, she moved with the focused intensity of a predator closing in for the kill. "Listen up, Marines. The enemy thinks we're tired. They're expecting us to fall back for rest and resupply like their other opponents. Instead, we're going to hit them harder than they've ever been hit before." Her assault force moved through terrain that Alliance scouts had marked as impassable. Humans climbed cliff faces that would challenge mountain goats, crossed rivers that contained acid levels fatal to most life forms, and navigated through weather conditions that grounded alien aircraft. Private Joe Parker found himself separated from his unit during the fighting. The young Marine from Montana faced 12 Vorthak warriors alone in a narrow canyon. Any rational soldier would have surrendered or tried to escape. Parker did what humans had been doing for millions of years when cornered by superior predators. He fought back with desperate creativity. Using rocks, broken equipment, and pure determination, Parker held off the enemy for 3 hours until reinforcements arrived. When rescue teams found him, he had killed 6 of the 12-foot war machines using nothing but improvised weapons and tactical cunning. "Son, how did you manage this?" asked Sergeant Johnson as he surveyed the carnage. "Sarge, they're big and scary, but they're not very smart. They kept making the same mistakes over and over. Back home, I used to hunt brown bears that were smarter than these things." Word of Parker's stand spread through both human and alien forces. The psychological impact was enormous. If a single human could hold off a dozen Vorthak warriors, what could organized human forces accomplish? The answer came that evening when Captain Tony Rodriguez led a coordinated assault on 3 separate Vorthak positions simultaneously. Using tactics that violated every principle of galactic warfare, human forces attacked uphill into superior numbers and across terrain that should have been impossible to cross. All 3 assaults succeeded. By the end of Day 4, the Vorthak Empire faced something it had never encountered in its conquest of 17 star systems. An enemy that refused to follow conventional military wisdom, could survive in conditions that killed other species, and seemed to get stronger the longer they fought. Commander HFY stood in his command center watching tactical displays that showed impossible things. Human forces were operating in areas marked as uninhabitable, fighting longer than any species should be able to survive, and winning battles against overwhelming odds. "General Clith, I believe we may have underestimated what it means to be a Deathworld species," he said quietly. The 5th day marked the beginning of something the galaxy had never seen before. General Patricia Graves arrived on Haven's Gate with the 2nd wave of human reinforcements and immediately changed everything the Alliance thought they knew about warfare. The veteran officer from Texas had commanded ground operations in 6 different Earth conflicts and brought with her 1,000 fresh Marines. "Colonel Rodriguez, what's the tactical situation?" Graves asked as her shuttle touched down in the middle of what used to be an active battlefield. "Ma'am, we've pushed the Vorthak back 40 kilometers in 4 days. They're retreating to defensive positions in the northern mountains," Rodriguez reported. Graves studied the tactical displays with growing interest. "Colonel, in your assessment, are the enemy forces beaten?" "No, ma'am. They're regrouping for another assault. Standard Alliance doctrine says we should consolidate our positions and prepare for their counterattack. Standard Alliance doctrine is why they were losing before we got here. We're going to do something different." Commander HFY listened to the human communications with growing confusion. His crystalline form pulsed with nervous energy as he tried to understand what the newcomers were planning. Alliance military theory called for defensive consolidation after successful operations. Both sides would regroup, resupply, and plan the next phase of combat. "General Graves, our forces require rest and resupply before continuing offensive operations," the Selenite commander explained. "The Vorthak will also need time to recover from their defeats." "Commander, with respect, that's exactly the wrong approach. When your enemy is running, you don't give them time to stop and think. You keep pushing until they break completely." This concept was alien to every species in the Alliance. Galactic warfare had evolved as a series of short, intense conflicts followed by long recovery periods. The idea of continuous military pressure was something their civilizations had never developed. Captain Jake Morrison coordinated the orbital support from his position aboard the Phoenix. The battle had moved beyond simple planetary defense into something much larger. Human forces were preparing to pursue the retreating Vorthak across multiple star systems. Admiral Brooks, "We need authorization to follow the enemy fleet when they retreat," Jake requested during his daily report to Earth Command. "Captain, are you suggesting extended interstellar warfare operations?" Brooks asked from her office on Luna Station. "Yes, ma'am. If we let them escape, they'll just regroup and attack another world. We need to finish what we started." The Admiral was quiet for several moments. "Jake, what you're describing has never been attempted in galactic history. Most species fight until one side retreats, then both sides return home. Admiral, that's why the Vorthak conquered 17 systems. Nobody ever fought them to complete defeat." Brooks nodded slowly. "Very well, Captain. You have authorization for extended operations. Show them what human persistence looks like." On the planet's surface, Major Chris Taylor demonstrated exactly what Admiral Brooks meant. His battalion had been tracking a retreating Vorthak force for 3 days through terrain that Alliance forces considered impossible to traverse. The 12-foot war machines were built for battlefield superiority, not extended marches through hostile wilderness. "Sir, the enemy is slowing down," reported Lieutenant Dan Parker through the radio. "Their heavy equipment is breaking down in these conditions." Taylor smiled as he studied the terrain ahead. The Vorthak were trying to retreat through a mountain pass that would challenge human mountain climbers. For war machines designed for flat battlefields, it was becoming a death trap. "Keep pushing them. Don't let them rest or regroup." This was persistence hunting on a galactic scale. Humans had evolved as endurance predators who could chase prey for days until exhaustion made the kill easy. The Vorthak had never faced an enemy who treated warfare like a marathon instead of a sprint. Captain Nicole Foster coordinated with Alien Fleet Commander Harbinger Zultaka as they prepared for the first interstellar pursuit in Alliance history. The energy-based being's ship could provide technological advantages that human vessels lacked, while human tactical doctrine offered strategies that no alien species had ever considered. "Captain Foster, our ships are designed for short-range defensive operations. Extended pursuit missions are beyond our operational parameters," Zultaka explained through the translation system. "Commander, our ships aren't built for extended operations either. We're going to do it anyway because it needs to be done." The combined human-alien fleet departed Haven's Gate in pursuit of the retreating Vorthak armada. For the first time in galactic history, a military force was attempting to completely destroy an enemy, rather than simply driving them away. The space battles that followed redefined naval warfare throughout the galaxy. Commander Rick Sullivan led human ships in hit-and-run attacks that prevented the Vorthak fleet from stopping to make repairs or resupply. When alien vessels provided covering fire, human forces would dart in to inflict maximum damage before withdrawing. "Sir, the enemy is trying to establish defensive positions around the 4th planet. reported Ensign Bill Parker from the sensor station. Negative. We're not giving them time to dig in. All ships prepare for immediate assault. This violated every principle of space combat doctrine. Attacking prepared positions without reconnaissance or tactical planning was considered military suicide. Sullivan was applying lessons learned from Earth's naval history, where aggressive action often succeeded where caution failed. The climactic moment came when General Patricia Graves found herself facing Warlord Vorthgan, the supreme commander of the Vorthak invasion fleet. The 12-foot biomechanical warrior had expected to negotiate a traditional galactic surrender that would preserve his remaining forces and allow him to retreat with honor. Human commander, you have fought well. We propose cessation of hostilities with mutual withdrawal to pre-war boundaries, Vorthgan announced through his mechanical translator. Graves looked at the alien war leader with cold determination. Warlord, I think you misunderstand the situation. This isn't a negotiation. This is your surrender. Impossible. Galactic military tradition requires honor-bound withdrawal after successful defense. You have proven your world's strength. We acknowledge this and offer peaceful coexistence. Warlord, Earth doesn't have galactic military traditions. We have our own rules and they're simple. You attacked innocent people. You killed billions of civilians. You threatened our allies. There is no honorable withdrawal. There is only complete defeat. The concept of total warfare was completely alien to Vorthgan. In his experience, conflicts ended when one side proved superior strength. The defeated force would withdraw with reduced territory but intact command structure. The idea that war could end with complete elimination of the enemy was something his species had never encountered. You cannot mean complete destruction. This violates all civilized standards of conduct, the warlord protested. Maybe by your standards, but we're not from your civilization. We're from Earth. The final battle lasted 6 hours and ended with the complete collapse of Vorthak military power. Their rigid hierarchical structure could not adapt to an enemy who refused to follow established rules of engagement. When human forces destroyed their command ships instead of accepting surrender, the entire enemy fleet fell into chaos. Colonel Amy Rodriguez led the final ground assault on the Vorthak command center. Her Marines had been fighting continuously for 8 days across multiple star systems. Instead of showing fatigue, they moved with the focused intensity of hunters who could smell victory. Ma'am, enemy forces are requesting terms for honorable surrender, reported Major Taylor. Major, the only terms are unconditional surrender, complete disarmament, full disclosure of military assets, and war crimes tribunals for their leadership. Within hours, the Vorthak Empire that had conquered 17 star systems in 4 months ceased to exist as a military force. Their surrender was absolute and final, something that had never happened in recorded galactic history. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Phoenix, watching Vorthak ships surrender their weapons and submit to Alliance control. The battle was over, but the implications were just beginning to sink in throughout galactic civilization. Sir, we're receiving communications from Alliance High Command. They want to know what our long-term intentions are, reported Lieutenant Carol Stevens. Jake smiled as he looked out at the defeated enemy fleet. Tell them we're just getting started. 6 months after the Vorthak Empire's collapse, the galaxy looked completely different. Admiral Jake Morrison stood in his new office on the Alliance flagship, watching construction crews from 12 different species building the largest military academy in galactic history. The facility would train the next generation of officers in what was now being called the human way of war. Admiral, the first class of alien cadets will arrive next week, reported Captain Nicole Foster as she reviewed the training schedules. The former sniper had been promoted to oversee the new military education program. We have students from 47 different species. Jake nodded as he studied the roster. Names he could barely pronounce from worlds he had never heard of 6 months ago, all of them coming to learn from the Deathworld species that had changed everything. How are they handling the curriculum? He asked. With difficulty, sir. Most of them can't understand why we teach concepts like acceptable losses and strategic sacrifice. Their species have never developed those ideas. On the planet below, Colonel Amy Rodriguez worked with a mixed unit of human and alien soldiers. The integration process was challenging, because most species had fundamental limits that humans simply ignored. But slowly, alien forces were learning to push beyond what they thought was possible. Lieutenant Zephvar, your Selenite troops need to extend their operational time. Rodriguez said to the crystalline officer. 4 hours of combat followed by 12 hours of rest isn't going to work in real warfare. Colonel, our physiology requires extended recovery periods. We cannot change millions of years of evolution. The alien replied with flashing lights of frustration. You don't need to change your evolution. You need to change your tactics. Work in rotating shifts. Use terrain advantages. Fight smarter instead of harder. This was the new reality throughout Alliance space. Human advisors were teaching alien forces how to think about warfare in completely different ways. The concepts seemed simple to humans who had grown up on a world where survival required constant adaptation. To other species, these ideas were revolutionary. Ambassador Carol Evans negotiated humanity's new position in galactic civilization from her office on the Alliance capital world. The young diplomat had been thrust into a role that no human had ever imagined when Earth first made contact with alien species. Instead of being junior members of an established order, humans had become the military leaders of known space. Ambassador, the Rigel Confederation is requesting human military advisors for their border disputes, her aide reported. That makes 38 requests this month. What's our response capacity? Evans asked. Admiral Morrison says we can provide limited advisory support, but we're already stretched thin across 12 systems. Evans looked out her window at the bustling alien city below. 6 months ago, humans had been curiosities from a dangerous world that most species avoided. Now they were the most sought-after military partners in the galaxy. Set up the meeting. But make it clear that human military support comes with conditions. No more ritual warfare, no honorable retreats. If they want our help, they fight to win. The changes went beyond military doctrine. Captain Tony Rodriguez found himself training alien special forces in techniques that came naturally to humans, but seemed impossible to other species. Night operations, environmental adaptation, and extended endurance missions were becoming standard throughout Alliance forces. Commander Yith Mora, your people need to stop thinking about darkness as a limitation. Rodriguez explained to the insectoid officer. Humans see night operations as an advantage. Low visibility means the enemy can't see you either. Captain, my species has never developed nocturnal hunting instincts. We require artificial illumination for combat effectiveness. The alien clicked through his translator. Then we'll teach your people to use technology to overcome biology. Night vision equipment, infrared targeting, sound-based navigation. There are ways around every limitation if you're willing to learn. The training programs were producing results that amazed alien military leaders. Species that had fought the same way for thousands of years were discovering capabilities they never knew they possessed. Human instructors pushed alien students beyond their comfort zones and often beyond what their own species thought was possible. General Patricia Graves oversaw the transformation of Alliance military structure from her headquarters on Haven's Gate. The world that had nearly fallen to the Vorthak was now the center of galactic military power. The changes went far beyond tactics and strategy to fundamental questions about the nature of warfare itself. Admiral Morrison, we're getting reports from the Outer Rim about species that are refusing to adopt the new military doctrines, Graves reported during their weekly strategy meeting. Some civilizations are calling human methods too extreme. What kind of resistance are we seeing? Jake asked. Mostly philosophical objections to concepts like total war and unconditional surrender. Several species are saying these ideas violate their cultural principles. Jake was quiet for several moments. General, we're not forcing anyone to adopt human methods, but we're also not going to protect species that refuse to protect themselves. If they want to keep fighting wars like games, that's their choice. And if hostile forces attack them, then they'll learn the hard way why humans fight differently. This policy was tested 3 months later when the Andorian Republic faced invasion by the hegemony of Krex. The Androians had rejected human military advisors, preferring their traditional approach to warfare based on limited engagements and negotiated settlements. The Krex had studied the Vorthak defeat and decided that overwhelming force applied quickly could defeat any enemy before human reinforcements arrived. The war lasted 6 days. The Androians followed standard galactic doctrine, engaging in ritualized combat with clear rules and expectations of honorable conduct. The Krex ignored these conventions and conquered 4 star systems before the Republic could organize an effective response. Captain Steve Davis received the emergency call for assistance while his fleet was on patrol near the combat zone. The situation was exactly what Admiral Morrison had predicted would happen to species that refused to adapt to the new reality. "Sir, the Androians are requesting immediate military assistance. Their entire fleet has been destroyed and their homeworld is under siege," reported his communications officer. "What are our orders from Alliance Command?" Davis asked. "Full discretionary authority. We can provide whatever assistance we deem appropriate." Davis studied the tactical situation with grim satisfaction. "Signal the Androian government. We'll help them, but it will be done the human way. Total war until the enemy is completely defeated." The rescue of the Andorian Republic became a textbook example of human military doctrine applied to galactic warfare. Davis ignored traditional combat zones and struck directly at Krek's supply lines, command centers, and industrial facilities. When the enemy tried to negotiate a ceasefire, human forces rejected all terms except unconditional surrender. The war ended with the complete collapse of the hegemony of Kreks and the installation of a human-supervised government in their territory. The message was clear throughout the galaxy. The old ways of fighting were dead. Species could adapt to human methods or face extinction when real threats emerged. Commander Rick Sullivan found himself appointed as the first director of Galactic Naval Operations, a position that had never existed before humans arrived. His job was to coordinate military responses across hundreds of different species and thousands of star systems. "Admiral, we're getting reports of massive improvements in Alliance fleet effectiveness," Sullivan reported during his monthly briefing. "Average response times are down 60%, and combat effectiveness is up by factors we can barely measure." "What's driving the improvements?" Jake asked. "Simple changes that humans take for granted. Continuous operations instead of scheduled breaks. Flexible command structures that can adapt to changing conditions. Most importantly, the willingness to take calculated risks instead of always playing it safe." The transformation was complete when the first class of alien cadets graduated from the new military academy. These young officers had been trained from the beginning in human tactical doctrine. They thought about warfare in ways that their own species had never imagined. Lieutenant Sektal of the Regelian Defense Corps stood at attention as Admiral Morrison presented graduation ceremonies. The young crystalline officer had broken every performance record in Academy history and was being assigned to lead a joint human-alien task force. "Lieutenant, what did you learn during your training that surprised you the most?" Morrison asked during the ceremony. "Admiral, I learned that victory is not about having superior technology or larger numbers. Victory belongs to whoever is willing to do whatever it takes to win." Morrison smiled as he looked out at the graduating class, representatives from dozens of species who now understood what it meant to think like a Deathworlder. The galaxy had changed and there was no going back. "Graduates, you are now part of something bigger than your individual species or worlds. You are guardians of galactic civilization. When threats emerge, you will respond with the full force of human determination backed by the combined strength of the Alliance." The ceremony ended with the new officers taking an